Okay, welcome to our live today. I will be speaking with Dr. Carolyn Bosack, and we're just waiting for folks to join. Good to see ya. Hey, Nick. Good to see ya.
Hi.
And hey, Carolyn. Dr. Carolyn Bosack has just joined us. Welcome.
How's it
And
going?
yeah, good. Thanks for joining me today. I'm really excited to chat to you, and I can see we've got a few folks jumping on board, and going to jump into our discussion today and be a part of it, which is fantastic. And hey, Joe, and we've got some wonderful people jumping on board. So great today, Carolyn. We're going to be chatting about gut health and how it is your secret to healthy hormones. And I just wanted to take a moment to introduce you, Dr. Carolyn, um, to the audience today, because you've got a very wonderful history, and you're such an accomplished integrative GP. Yeah, but it's true. It's true. I think you are, and I know a lot of folks that think the same.
Thank you, Sheena.
And you're welcome. Dr. Carolyn's here in Moonee Pond. She has a clinic called Your Integrated Health, and which is www.yih.com.au. I think I got that one right. And Carolyn is an integrative GP with over 20 years experience. And there's lots of areas of interest that I know you have. Some of the key areas Carolyn loves to work in: hormonal health, of course, gut health, women's health, fertility, chronic diseases, inflammation, or also autoimmune issues, but also really making sure that folks take an integrative and an overview of their whole life and look at things from a holistic perspective. So you're definitely not a cookie cutter practitioner by any stretch of the imagination. And yeah, so you are also an athlete. You've actually trained and ran into world champions as um, as an athlete, which is just astounding. And yeah, look, you really walk the walk. So yeah, there's wonderful things. You've got such a wonderful history and wonderful interests, and I'm really excited to talk to you today. So welcome.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So I can see that a lot of folks are now online, which is fantastic, and we might jump into what we were going to discuss about gut
Yeah.
and healthy hormones. So Carolyn, if you'd like to just give a little bit of an overview of, yeah, why is that important to you in your practice, and the sorts of things that you're interested in with gut and
Yeah.
hormones?
I think, look, with the sort of integrated medical conferences and courses that I've attended, so one thing that kept coming up in no matter what body system was being covered was gut health as being a contributor.
Yep.
And so, and it seemed that, it was often, if you don't deal with that, you don't really ever get a full handle on someone's chronic condition. So I ended up doing my own sort of further learning in it, and now I've been implementing that in my practice. And so now I can see, just from experience and from my patient outcomes, that just what an important sort of modality it's been. In terms of hormonal health, it's quite a large contributor often. And yeah, so it's been a good option to a good modality to have. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. As a Chinese medicine practitioner, I just see, and you'd probably agree, that it all starts with the gut. I mean, anything that we eat, anything that we absorb and get energy from, you know, usually most things come from the digestive tract. And so if we're not actually creating the right building blocks from the get-go,
Yeah.
To run our bodies, which are these complex, you know, organisms,
Yeah.
then things are just going to go blah and just not work. So it makes perfect sense, and I see that a lot in my practice too. So
Yeah. So
yeah, and it's
the gut's very, so it's intimately associated with our immune system,
yeah,
and then the immune system that is associated around, you know, physically around the gut then talks to the rest of the body. And so that's how it sort of communicates. And unfortunately, you know, fortunately or unfortunately, it so whatever you you affect in the immune system around the gut, then affects the rest of the body, and that's a, you know, continuous phenomenon. So yeah, and so basically whatever you you know, there's the element of the microbiome. So I don't know if anyone knows, but other people know that in terms of our gut microbiome, if we're talking number of cells or, you know, amount of DNA, there's 99% of the DNA in our body is actually our gut microbiome, and 1% is us. So that's how important. So obviously a lot of energy goes into maintaining that, and you know, nothing that our body does is by accident. So that sort of speaks of the importance of the gut microbiome.
so just to put that into like perspective, really, we're kind of more bacteria and gut bugs.
That's right.
Like our bodies are made up of more bacteria and gut bugs than they are of actual us humans.
That's right.
And without them, what would we be? We'd be like,
well, that's where we see a lot of dysfunction, is when you've got, you know, either not enough or the wrong balance of bacteria. And then you start to see dysfunction in many different ways. Hormones is one of them, but, you know, our immune system generally, so autoimmune conditions, but even obesity and our metabolism. So you can actually, if you were going to do DNA genotyping, you can predict obesity 90% of the time on your bacterial microbiome, really? As opposed to our human DNA, which is predictive 55% of the time. So, yeah, so that's how important they are.
Yeah, that's incredible. So you test the DNA of the microbiome, the bugs, the DNA of the bugs, and then you can have that accuracy. So there's also other things. I know we were chatting previously about this, and there's other things that it can impact. So say, for example, fertility, like in the reproductive or the vagina, like the microbiome there actually impacts the ability for someone to, well, the research is coming out now that it can impact someone's ability to fall pregnant.
Yeah, so the gut really drives, so the gut microbiome is sort of like the central hub, and that really drives the other, you know, microbiome areas. And, you know, the vagina is one of them. And so whatever happens, so if you've got any issues going on in your gut, then that will cause an issue with your vaginal microbiome. And so now that, I mean, it's a lot further behind in terms of the research, but they've mapped out now, they've mapped out the vaginal microbiome, and so now they're able to start to correlate, you know, different sort of populations or different spreads of the microbiome with certain conditions, and fertility is one of them. So that's an emerging area.
That's so important. I mean, I see a lot of folks who do struggle with fertility, also things like PCOS and endometriosis in our clinic. And just to know that that is such a massive contributing factor it's really good for people to know that, and also that there's things that they can do to change that, because we can change our microbiome as well by changing our lifestyle and our diet, right, and things, you know, to affect that. So yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah.
So
well,
I suppose bit of a discussion on how, you know, what is the link between the gut microbiome and our hormones.
Yes.
So, you know, we've got our population of gut bacteria, and so they're, you know, they perform several roles, and a lot of roles of that. The most important role is immune function, and so they produce and metabolism, and heart health, and so they perform quite a few different roles. And if you've got an imbalance of the bacteria there, then what can result is instead of producing these protective, so normally the gut bacteria there will produce protective, what are called short chain fatty acids, and they go out to the body and they, you know, regulate your metabolism and regulate your level of inflammation. So without that balance, which can be lots of different reasons. So it can be lack of sleep, it can be use of antibiotics, it can be you know, you've got a gut infection, it can be you know, toxins or other pharmaceuticals, or poor diet, you know, high sugar, high processed diet. So many different reasons for this dysbiosis, what we call dysbiosis.
Stress
and
as well.
And then instead of producing these protective chemicals called short chain fatty acids, you end up producing inflammatory chemicals, and particularly also causing an inflammation in the gut lining. You end up with inflammatory mediators, so which are called cytokines. So they go out to the rest of the body, and that is the link between our gut health and our hormones. So unfortunately, those cytokines, which, you know, have, you know, in many situations life-saving roles, but when they're inappropriately produced in that way, so what ends up happening is they get in the way of our normal hormone communication. So you end up with an imbalance in hormones, and then you end up with, you know, such presentations as heavy or painful bleeding, or, you know, severe PMS and mood issues, and breast tenderness and fluid retention, and, you know, and worsening of your endometriosis and certain types of PCOS. And so that's the link. And there's also the situation where if you've got a dysbiosis, certain strains can produce an enzyme which actually recycles a hormone that was actually packaged up by the liver in order to be excreted. So it recycles, so it reactivates that hormone and ends up going back into your body, and that further worsens the imbalance. So that, and food intolerances can lead to that.
That's interesting. So not only does inflammation in the gut disrupt the body's ability to just create happy hormones and keep that balance, because obviously they all need to be in balance, but it also prevents the body from what it was going to excrete. It actually messes up with the waste management process, I guess, if you will, and then that will further mess with your hormonal balance, because the liver's not able to actually clear it properly in its cleaning job. Okay, right. So it's not just, you know, eating poorly or having these problems is not just going to make you feel a bit off kilter. It's actually going to really mess with all the systems in your body, it sounds, and the hormonal systems.
So over time, so you start off with, you know, a bit of inflammation, a little bit of dysfunction, but that ultimately leads to, you know, disease. And so, you know, obviously the time to get it is as early as you can. So
and so I guess that leads me to my next question that I had for you, Carolyn, around what are the, you know, just in real world terms, what are some of the things, some of the problems that you see around gut and hormones in your clinical practice that are really common, and that also we can talk about things you can do to, because I imagine some of our watchers are actually going to be like, oh yeah, that's me, or I know a friend with that. And then we can talk about some of the things you can do to, like, easily prevent and change these problems so they're not such an issue. So what do you notice in your practice? a lot,
I suppose in my patient population, I tend to get women either with severe PMS issues or severe perimenopause issues. And they're actually quite similar in their presentations, a little bit different in what's going on hormonally, but very, very similar. So issues like, you know, painful periods, heavy bleeding, frequent bleeding, breast tenderness, headaches, brain fog, you know, severe mood issues, you know, and general inflammation. So the two groups are, you know, just premenopausally, so just you know, women who have a hard time with their cycle, and then perimenopausally for some women who've never had issues, but then that's the wake up call where you know, the proverbial hits the fan, and then you've really got to start working on things that you need to work on. So and you know, gut is one aspect of assessing them. So, and everything's interlinked, of course. So, you know, lack of exercise causes reduction in muscle mass, insulin resistance, but you know, but then reduction of exercise also causes dysbiosis. So, insomnia, you know, again, so everything's connected. So it's a matter of sorting all of the things that we know, or assessing all of the things that we know affect, you know, a person and their well-being, and then say, okay, well, this is what we can do about it. And part of that is assessing gut health. And for some people, we might go ahead and do a specific gut microbiome map. But for others, we might just say, okay, well, let's just try, you know, if I see some bleedingly obvious things in their lifestyle, so look, let's try this first, and then review you in, you know, a few months, and if we're still not winning, then
yeah. So that's great. It sounds like you keep it really simple for people. You don't, you know, go on a big journey of like change everything in your life, because obviously, you know, we need to, for a lot of folks, we just do one thing at a time. And it sounds like you take that one step at a time approach with your clients, with your patients, which is really, really good.
So
and keep it simple and practical.
I won't overwhelm them, because I know it's for sustainable change. You know, we're all wired like this. It's all a bit too hard, and we'll give up and we'll do nothing. So always give everyone two things to do. They get a little bit of instant gratification, then come back, let's work on the next bit. So, and I'd say that the first two things generally, you know, if I was going to give someone advice on, you know, straight up, you know, say for the audience, you know, what would be two things? And two things would be, you know, feed your microbiome. So, because the advice of feeding your microbiome is actually conducive to good health generally. So, and that is, you know, a lot of prebiotic foods. So mostly fruit and veg. So I talk a lot about the diet, and it doesn't have to be that hard. It doesn't have to be that hard. So there's so many different diets, and, you know, measurements and rules, and it is, I keep saying, it doesn't have to be that hard. So I draw a circle. We talk about, you know, the amount of fruit and veg, and increasing your variety. So the people who are the healthiest with really good diversity in their microbiome, so that means a lot of different species and lots of those beneficial species, generally tend to eat at least 30 different plant foods a week. So start getting people's head around, okay, well, you know, I'll give them a list and say, these are the foods that you need to choose from, you know, not just sticking to you know, lettuce and tomato and cucumber, say. So you've really got to vary up your plant foods, and that's, you know, fruit and veg, nuts and seeds, and whole grains, and then, you know, with enough healthy fat, enough protein, with those whole
olive oil
and fruit and good quality, and healthy fats, you know, is basically not having seed oils. So which,
can you just define seed oil for the audience as well, because
seed
it's
oils
really
are highly refined, highly refined oils, things like, you know, sunflower oil, canola oil, rice bran oil, those sorts of things. So and they're in a lot of processed foods, so it means, you know, shopping on the outside of the supermarket because the inside aisles basically contain all the nasties. And
So that's a
then,
great concept, the shopping on the outside of the supermarket. You
yeah,
say, so you go to the, like, obviously if you don't have issues with dairy, eggs,
yeah.
and then obviously skip over the frozen ice cream, because that's on the outside, right? Chocolate bars are on the outside. Skip over those, fruit and veg,
Yeah,
and then just the whole foods that tend to be around the outside of the
yeah,
supermarket, right?
yeah.
It's a good concept. I like it. It's nice and simple. But you
You better to
continue.
support your
Yeah.
local grocer though.
Yes,
Yeah,
if you can. Then you can do the whole of the grocery
yeah,
store if it's
yeah,
a
that's right.
local
Yeah,
fruit and veg
yeah.
person, and local butcher. Yeah. So
Uh,
so good oils, shopping around the outside of the supermarket. What other things are going to support that healthy microbiome?
yeah, and then and I'll say I always incorporate movement. So exercise, so lazy person, lazy gut, and
Lazy
lazy
person, lazy
gut.
gut.
Yeah, and lazy gut. So the connection there
Yeah.
is that lazy gut. So with stagnancy, you tend to recycle. So you'll breed,
Yeah.
or you'll tend to breed more of the bacteria that will recycle your hormones and
Yeah.
toxins.
If you don't
So
exercise as much.
yeah, so lazy person, lazy gut, and so if you've got poo sitting there for longer, so what's end up going to happen is that you're going to reabsorb things that shouldn't be reabsorbed, or in such great amounts. So so movement, and the other thing that movement does is of course it reduces inflammation generally. It helps with mental health in terms of a certain factor that helps with nerve regeneration, and it reduces insulin resistance. So particularly as we moving past 35 and we're starting to reduce our muscle mass, if you keep everything the same and even eat the same, you notice that people tend to get a different body shape, and that's you have this age-related muscle mass reduction. And that results in this body shape change as you become more insulin resistant. So, lifting weights, getting your cardio, but then also supporting the other ways of hormonal detoxification, and that's through sweat, which of course it comes with exercise, and urination. So keeping well hydrated, and just all the different ways and taking the load off all the other systems that are trying to release, because we're surrounded by the other part to the story is we're surrounded by endocrine disruptor chemicals which feed into the hormone imbalance story and worsen hormone imbalance symptoms, and they're in everyday products like plastics and makeup and body washes and solvents.
Carpet.
Check out environmentalworkinggroup.org or ewg.org and start to familiarize yourself if you haven't yet done that, because these chemicals are everywhere, and we basically, I know that they're very important in terms of, say, women trying to get pregnant. You really got to try and avoid these things, but particularly fragrances, everyone uses fragrances in so many different products every day, and if you look at so we're surrounded by that, and that's just another thing for your body to have to detoxify, apart from its own hormone, from its own hormones. So it sort of further worsens the situation. So try and avoid endocrine disruptor chemicals. So I give people resources on where to go, and start to familiarise themselves, because that's another sort of rabbit hole learning journey.
And that's the thing. It also, I can imagine, for anyone who is struggling with a fertility or a autoimmune, or even just a gut, or just feeling a problem with their gut, or just feeling a bit out of sorts, that it can feel a little bit like, whoa, that's a lot to kind of think about. But the nice thing is that, when someone, say, engages, someone like yourself, Carolyn, to get help, that you just narrow it down and narrow the focus, and they can sort of rely on the fact that you can actually filter out what's really important for them to focus on at any one time, which is really such a lovely thing. So if anyone is watching or, is feeling overwhelmed by those types of things, or where to start, then they know that that's why they would engage you or hire you to be like, right, I'm going to do some investigating or help you look in the right space so you're not feeling overwhelmed, which is really good. Yeah. And you can share those resources and things when they're, when you think that's worth looking at. That's a nice thing to know that you've got all that experience under your belt. Yeah. But there is a lot, you're right, there's environmental and things going on inside our bodies. And I guess if there's a bit of a tipping point, right? So if someone's really healthy and robust, they're usually okay to deal with some of these toxins and elimination in the body. But when they're not as robust and they're needing a bit of extra support, that's when things start to go off the rails.
So everyone has a different capability. Obviously, the younger you are, usually the more able you are to cope. But then age gets in the way, and it's usually someone has, most people have some sort of wake-up call to, their environmental sort of issues. I mean, I'm talking generally, diet, toxins, exercise, sleep, all of that. You can cope until a certain point, and everyone gets to a certain point. Yeah.
And it was interesting you said before that, particularly with age and with women, we will do something a certain way, eat certain foods, exercise will move our bodies in a certain way, and then our body changes as we age, and we get to a point it's like, oh, hang on, I'm still eating the same food, and I still, just walk to work as my exercise, but for some reason I'm putting on all this weight and I just feel awful. So what you're saying is it's like we have to actually do a bit of a reassessment and reprioritize what's important, knowing that you can't just keep doing things the same way, right?
So I mean, there was probably always a better way of doing it. It's just that your body was able to cope until that point. Because you get some people who do it all right, and it's great, and you don't really have to say too much to them. And then there's others who need a little bit extra. Need guidance.
That's why you're here. That's why I'm here as well, for people I see. This is great. So I guess what would be really nice as well, we've had a talk about how to nurture your gut, how to feed your microbiome. I'm just going to check time as well, and we'll very soon open it up to folks who have any questions for Carolyn or myself, or anything they'd like to share. They can pop it in and we can field those questions. So whoever's watching, feel free to just write down and send us your questions, and we will do our best to answer them. So Carolyn, and whilst folks are thinking about what they'd like to ask you, is there any other tips, Carolyn, or have you got any other advice about things that people can do, something really simple and easy and actionable that folks can do straight away, that's not hard at all, to improve their microbiome, improve their hormones, and you might have to share there.
I would say my top tip is eat 30 different plant foods a week. That is my top tip. And most people don't. So most people don't do that. And make that the bulk of what you eat. So it needs to be, most of what you eat needs to be that. And then, like I said, balanced with the other, your other macronutrients. So I find a lot of people, they'll restrict one or another macro, and I'm talking either protein or carbohydrate or fat even, and that's not good for your gut microbiome. So our gut microbiome was evolved for a balanced diet. So but the other thing it does is that if you're not getting enough of a macronutrient, you end up craving more food
Yeah.
to make up for that lack. And you know, I'm amazed. I am constantly amazed when people say, "I'll do this, this, and that, and the other," and but then they get to the end of the day, and then they're, you know, eating the stuff at night that they shouldn't be eating.
Good night.
You know,
Good night snacking.
so yes,
Gotcha.
but you can fix all that by doing it right in the day. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it would be eating at least 30 different plant foods a week, and
just
that being the bulk
put
of
that into, and sorry, what I was just missed
that
that.
being the bulk of what you eat, the fruit,
That
veg,
being the bulk of what you eat.
Yeah.
Yep. And people could easily get 30 different plant foods. It doesn't have to be like 30 leafy green vegetables. It can be a range of vegetables and fruit. And so all your veggies, all your fruit come in under that, all your leafy greens, obviously. What else comes in under that people might not already think,
whole
that's
grains,
actually
so, you know,
whole grains.
Legumes and
legumes.
Lentils and beans and
Okay. Cool.
you know, nuts and seeds, so chia seeds, quinoa. So they, you know, depending on the type of carbohydrate that's in there, in these particular, because there are lots of different types of carbohydrate, they feed certain populations of bacteria. So that's the whole idea of eating at least 30 different ones per week, because then you're feeding the diverse population. And a healthy microbiome is a very diverse and rich population. So that's the idea.
I think if we remember the fact that, you know, 98% of our DNA is made up of things that aren't actually us. We have to actually, our job is to feed them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a concept that's just like,
it's a crazy concept. But it just speaks of how important they are, because, you know, that's, our body's clearly. So someone's asked about activated charcoal.
If you wanted to.
Look, I don't.
Yeah. What do you think about activated charcoal?
Look, it's a binder. So that binds. So whatever you're having. So in terms of it's not so much working to what's inside your system. It's what's in the, you know, it's I suppose it binds and helps you poo out. So I suppose the key is what you put in there, is not having to
So are you saying that activated charcoal too might also get rid of good things as well?
No. I'm just saying that
not so.
Rather than rely on that, change what's going in at the top end. Yeah.
So once again, looking at what you're actually popping into your gut, feeding your bug friends in the first place. Okay. Yeah. It's interesting to know, and I'm sure, and there's lots of different ways that people, you know, things that people would do to try and help manage gut symptoms, but keeping it simple is a great place to start.
I mean, look, for me, my approach, you know, everyone's different, every integrative doctor's different, but I try and go as naturally as possible and as minimally as possible and as sustainable as possible. You want something that you can keep going, you know, long term with, and that's not going to cause further harm in any way. So getting all of that right. And then, of course, there's always, you know, there are nutraceuticals and things that I advise, especially when we're trying to get the gut right. But the end game is to get the gut right and then be able to come off those things, and for you to sustain that yourself.
Yeah. And it's not often I find that there's lots of products that will be touted as like the product to fix your gut or the new most amazing probiotic or whatever, and that can be quite exciting and attractive to folks who have been struggling, but starting just with good food is such a sensible. It's not as exciting, but it actually, I think I'm sure you'd agree, or folks would agree, that it's 9 times out of 10, it's probably the most effective thing you can do. Save your money from getting the supplements that are going to be the miracle cure and spend it on really good fruit and veg.
The supplements need to be used judiciously. So they need to be used judiciously, you know, depending on the particular patient that you've got in front of you and what's going on. Someone's asked about, she said meant the endocrine disruptors. I don't know if they're used for that. So endocrine disruptors need to be bound by the liver, and remember it's an enzyme that is reactivating them. So I don't know in terms of activated charcoal and the endocrine disruptors. I'm not sure. I don't know. But anything that helps you, you know, anything that keeps you regular is the best way, is just keeping the movement going. So nothing sits there too long.
Yeah. Hydration, movement. Yeah. That's great. And if anyone else has got any other questions for Carolyn, or anything that they've found interesting so far or wanted to chat to us about, feel free. We'll be going for a little while longer, a few more minutes. Yeah. It's so interesting to know that this is still an emerging, the science and the research on this is really still emerging. There's so much to be done. And I'd be really interested to, keen to find out how, what we discover about chronic disease, like more chronic disease and more autoimmune diseases and the gut, and how that's just, I think there's going to be a lot more involvement than we ever gave it credit for as we look into the future.
Yeah.
There's
a lot of stuff already going on, and it is good. And the vaginal microbiome, and now, you know, that test has now become available. And I plan to do, you know, some training in that and learn a lot more about that, because that's exciting as well. You know, not just the fertility, but you know, for recurrent issues, you know, infections and things, where your general swabs will give you, you know, very, very minimal answers, and yet some women really struggle with their vaginal health. So that's an exciting area.
It is, and it's quite simple, but just knowing to read the signs of what the body's trying to tell you is, you know, getting the right information can be so impactful, for people. Yeah, and just touching as well on coming back to the good fats, I would like to just flesh out just a little bit more. What is the good oils that folks should be having to really support your gut?
So olive oil, but good quality olive oil. So, you know, extra virgin. So Australian olive oil is good. You know, I worked at an integrative practice, so the founder of that, who's very well known, he did some investigation on that, and you know, it's only pretty much only a couple of it's pretty much Australian brands that really adhere to the standard of extra virgin, so olive oil, coconut oil, avocado, and then you know, animal fat to you know, in reasonable amounts, you know, nothing excessive, but there's animal fat shouldn't be shied away from.
I think a lot of people were a bit of, they don't see that in the best light, but it's actually okay, I'd imagine, when you're taking it as a whole food.
It's the seed oil that actually causes the issues more so, and processed food, high sugar food,
Processed drinks as well, and any sports drinks or soft drinks and that sort of stuff. I'm just checking now, have we got any more questions? No, that's all we've got at the moment, which is great. But I hope that folks who have joined us today have gotten a lot out of today. I know there's so many topics in here that we could just talk for hours and hours on and just go for a whole new live for each of those topics. Someone has just jumped in with a question. We've got any info on parasites and their effect? I think that's perhaps what a watcher is asking. Yeah,
I suppose, yeah, you know, with parasites, I suppose some people have that as part of their normal flora. And, you know, if you don't have symptoms, you don't have any issues, and, you know, then there's nothing to deal with. But, you know, when, you know, for example, you know, I was dealing with a patient who I suppose has got an autoimmune condition. Oh, this is an example, autoimmune condition, and has just, her diet's become quite restricted. And so I thought a microbiome map would, because we've, you know, she's actually done a very good job in trying to change a lot of different things in her lifestyle, and just doesn't seem to be winning on a few things. And so I suggested a microbiome map, and we did find a parasite. And along with the parasite, we found, you know, dysbiosis. So what came first? Well, if she's got, you know, a autoimmune thyroid condition, then I would say the dysbiosis came first. But in itself, a parasite can cause dysbiosis, which, you know, and inflammation of the gut lining, which then means that you're more likely then to react to foods that you probably wouldn't have reacted to. So some people can be quite happy with the parasite and it can be there and not cause any issues. But then for some people, it's actually causing, you know, everything that was spoken about. And only once you get rid of that parasite, that then can you, you know, get a handle on their condition.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So, you know, you've got some hitchhikers.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're fine, sometimes they're not.
Yeah.
But I guess you don't know until you sort of do a little bit of a dig and find out. And in terms of, you know, hormonal health, it's when the body's able to actually do what it needs to do properly, and there's less inflammation there, the hormones are going to work so much better, and
that's right.
Everything's going to be cleared properly and be in the right balance.
That's right.
Yeah. Yep. And you know, that would also really just knock on to things like emotional well-being, mental health, like just energy level, all of that, every system in the body, it has, the gut has this impact on.
Yeah.
That's pretty powerful.
I suppose to finish up on you know, the vagus nerve connects the gut to the brain, and those.
Now the vagus nerve, just for everyone at home, is the one that goes, brain right down
to gut.
Yep.
It's the one that makes you hiccup. It's the one that is actually it's the parasympathetic nervous system, so very calming to, you know, it opposes the fight or flight. And so there's a direct connection between the gut and the brain via the vagus nerve, and those mediators that I spoke about earlier. So when you've got a good, healthy bacteria producing short chain fatty acids, they actually travel up the vagus nerve and maintain good brain health. And then on the converse, you've got a dysbiosis and then, or leaky gut, and then you get inflammatory mediators traveling up the vagus nerve, causing neuroinflammation and a host of issues, you know, anxiety, depression, but even, you know, neurological diseases. So, that's, you know, that's
incredible.
Yeah.
So these short chain fatty acids and also inflammatory markers can actually travel up the nervous system and actually enter the brain
and barrier and
across
cause problems.
The blood-brain barrier. Yeah, that's amazing to know.
Yeah.
So it's not just you.
Yeah.
It's actually inside of you, and it's your organs as well, not just here. If you know if you're needing a little bit of extra support.
All interlinked. All interlinked.
Yeah, absolutely, it is. And oh well, this has just been such a wonderful pleasure. I I I imagine that folks, yeah, have gotten a lot out of today. And obviously, if anyone who's watching now or in the future, if you are struggling, and you're in the Melbourne area, or even I'm pretty sure you do some remote consultations as well. So yeah, you can reach out to Carolyn to give you a little bit of guidance, keep it simple, and just take one step at a time to get you on the road to better gut health and hormonal health. And I feel like I could just talk to you for hours and hours, but I understand it's a lunchtime life, so we might all have to get back to work soon. But thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you everyone.
And thank you so much, Dr. Carolyn, for your time. It's just been great. I've learned so much, and I'm off going to go research all this cool stuff that you've talked about. And I wanted to just give you a little plug. So yeah, Your Integrated Health is the name of your clinic, and it's www.yih.com.au. You are local to Moonee Ponds, just up the road from here at Chi Medicine. You are also on Instagram and Facebook, for those of you like to be on those platforms. A little bit,
I'm trying. I'll get there.
Well, look, I think you can just go on and look at her. Yeah. There's a picture up of Carolyn who just her latest I'm going to say triathlon. It wrong. It was the triathlon. Yeah. It was a triathlon, and you're just smashing it. And I think you what did you come with that? That was very impressive.
Third.
You came third, but out of hundreds of people. So I'm always in awe of your amazing ability to just smash that. That's great. Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you. Getting lots of thank yous coming in. And at any point, just reach out to Carolyn or myself if you've got any questions about health, well-being, anything. But this has been great. And so thank you. And thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time. And we'll sign off. We'll sign off for today. All right. Bye, Carolyn. Bye, everyone.
See ya.
All right, bye.
Bye.